So, what does a pageant coach actually do? That's what we are going to talk about in today's episode. Welcome back to the Win a Pageant podcast. My name is Alycia Darby. I am a pageant coach, and I have been for many decades in a lot of different forms. And so, in today's episode, we're going to unpack the different elements of pageant coaching because there are a few different elements that kind of come under the same umbrella. And I'm going to explain to you a little bit about each one. This could help you decide what is the most important quality that you might look for in a pageant coach. So let me get started first by sharing with you the 5 different elements that go into pageant coaching, okay? Now, this is true for the coaching industry in general. I know I have hired coaches for nearly every aspect of my life. Many high achievers do hire a coach in order to get them to that next phase of wherever they're going, whether it is an elite athlete or if it's somebody that's, really just wanting to level up in an area of their life. I've hired coaches in these 5 different forms for things like building my career, helping to start my business, even improving my marriage, my physical health, nutritionist. There's lots of different things. And these 5 areas that I'm going to teach you in a moment are really how you can understand coaching and how to understand why somebody is charging what they are charging. Okay, so let's break it down. The first of these 5 elements is an accountability partner. Now, in some coaching aspects, now not all coaches will have all 5 of these elements. They tend to have one as their main element, and then they might have a second, a third, a fourth as additional pieces to it. I'll explain what I mean in a moment here. But an accountability partner, essentially what they do is whether or not they personally have achieved what you are attempting to achieve, they can hold you accountable to your goals. So it's not that they've done the thing that you are trying to do. So maybe your Olympic coach hasn't been an Olympic medalist before, but they know that they can hold you accountable to your own goals. That's an accountability partner. Now, if I were going to go to the Olympics, I would not only want an accountability partner. You would need something more than that, okay? For something of that level, right? Okay, so the second element is mentorship. Now, typically, a mentor has achieved the very thing that you are wanting to achieve. And it was something that they did, a structure that they did that they can share with you about their strategy, what worked for them. A mentor is really important for most careers because they can tend, especially in the corporate world, because they can tend to show you, hey, here's how I navigated this. Here's how I went about that. Here's what this person is like or what this person is like. And here's what worked for me. That is a mentor. Now, if you were going to be competing in the Olympics, a mentor could be useful because they can share with you kind of what it was like in the Olympic grounds or how they managed the time zone differences or how they handled not having an entire team present with them and having it just be them, or maybe how it was like to not be, be away from their family for so long. Mentorship can be very valuable. But again, in the Olympics, you're probably going to want something more. Okay. So it really depends on what you are looking for. Now, the third aspect of this is true coaching. Okay. Now, coaching sort of encompasses all 5 of these, which is why I want to break them down for you. But to be a coach is its own skill set. Okay. Different from accountability, which is a skill set. Mentorship is a skill set. Coaching is a skill set as well. Now, somebody can become a coach without having any experience in the industry at all. They may not have achieved the thing, so that they could be an accountability partner. But the difference is that a great coach, usually they've gone through some level of certification or they have some level of training that they've done. A coach is somebody who has the right questions and believes that by asking you these questions in this order, that you can have your own breakthrough. That's really the definition of coaching. I've been through many different coaching certifications, and that's essentially what it is. We are trained on which questions that we need to ask in order to help you understand where you're stuck and how you can have a breakthrough. Now, if you were going to go to the Olympics, that's a really cool thing to have, right? Somebody that can coach you to discover, where is she getting stuck at, and how do we break through that? Now, the difference between a coach and a mentor is the coach maybe, but usually they don't have to have done it before. This is why in the pageant industry, you see a lot of men that are coaches. I often was like, why are there men being coached? Like, how could they even relate? But it's because they might be a really great coach because they ask the right questions and things like that, even if they are not a mentor. They've never done it themselves before, but they could still be a good coach because they know the questions to ask in order for you to get your breakthrough. Now, the next step up from that would technically be a counselor. Now, a counselor is somebody who is able to see theoretically what happens in patterns. So a counselor skill set could usually be built, often it's built from somebody who's studied it. You study, when I went through my counseling degree, I studied human development, both in the behavioral and a learning sense. And so there are patterns in human behavior, patterns in human development, patterns in human learning. And so those things can be applied. And so somebody that's a counselor can look at an individual situation and say, this is very similar to this theory. I wonder if this is a part of your experience. And what is so awesome about that is that as a client, you get to see the insights of what, it helps you just make sense of things. Like you're like, wow, so this isn't just me. Like this is a thing. This is actually happening. I see this a lot in the pageant industry because of the fact that these women are going through the pageantry, are dealing with the same things. I always say to my clients, 2 weeks before the pageant, things start hitting the fan. Like all of a sudden, everything starts falling apart. I've seen that because I've worked with thousands of clients around the world. 2 weeks before your pageant, that's what tends to happen. It's a physiological thing, it's a psychological thing, but it's a theory that exists that if we say, hey, this is something that generally happens, it's possible that if we said, could this be what your experience is, it might help us to better understand it. You see this a lot in marriage therapy because the similar things are happening in relationships, in a parental and child relationships. There's lots of theories around these things because we can say, hey, it might not be true. However, what if we just considered, could this be the thing that's happening for you? So when I got my counseling degree, that was one of the things I was like, wow, this is awesome because it helps people understand so much deeper about what could be going on instead of just feeling like, I don't know why I'm stuck. I don't know why I'm confused. I don't know why I have no clarity on this. I don't know why I keep going back to square one. Like, what is wrong with me? And instead we can be like, actually, there's a theory for this. Let me apply it. Okay, so that's a counselor. Now, a counselor might not be an accountability partner. They might not be a mentor. Maybe they've never done it before themselves. Maybe they know some questions to ask, but more than anything, they're looking for theories that can apply to your situation. Now, if you're going to the Olympics, this would be somewhat beneficial because it's going to be helpful to know to get you unstuck, but it's still not the very thing that you need. What I believe most pageant women can benefit from, now not everybody, because sometimes you do really just need the accountability, or you just want somebody who's had that title that you want to have and just tell me how you did it, and that's what you're looking for. But a consultant is the fifth and the highest level of all 5 of these aspects of coaching. Now, a consultant has a proven strategy. They know what works, and they're going to tell you how to do it. Now, you see the difference between a consultant and a mentor is that a mentor generally has only the way that worked for them. And that's a good thing because if you are very similar to that person, maybe the way that they did it, and if the circumstances are very similar, then the way they did it is probably going to work for you. This is why mentors are very popular in the corporate world because circumstances tend to not change too much. And so what worked for that person probably is going to work for you, But in a consulting way, consultants are very popular for businesses because trends are ever changing. There are things that are moving and shifting. And so a consultant would come into a business. This is how you might have heard of it or experienced it before. Consultant would come into a business and say, hey, Here's the strategy that works. Let's apply it to your organization. That's what a consultant does. Now, usually a consultant has done this before for either themselves or for others. They always will have already applied it and it worked, depending on like in lots of different organizations, okay? So it's a proven strategy that works over and over and over and over and over. Now, let me explain how this applies to pageantry, okay? Before I do that, I'm curious to hear from you right now, just with knowing what you know. In the comments below, tell me, what do you think is the very most important aspect that you would look for in a pageant coach? Is it one of those 5 things? Maybe it's something completely different altogether. But I'm curious to know, what would you want to hire for a pageant coach? Leave that for me in the comments below. Of these 5 things, let me show you how it shows up in the pageant industry, okay? Now, some coaches, some pageant coaches, and I'm using that term broadly to kind of encompass all 5 of these concepts. Most pageant coaches do a little bit of a few of these things. So this would be like a personal trainer who also on the weekends is texting you like, hey, don't forget get your cardio in, or make sure you're drinking your water this weekend. So there's a little bit of an accountability piece to that as well. But really, a personal trainer is often a consultant. A certified personal trainer is usually a consultant. They're like, this is the strategy that works. This is what I've helped other clients who have the same issues that you have. And so let's apply it to you, okay? So now, usually in the pageant industry, most of us as pageant coaches begin as a mentor. So this is how I got started. This is how most people you see get started in the industry, where they have achieved something great. And so they're like, let me show other people how to do this too. And they're teaching what worked for them. So they're saying, this is what I did. This is what worked for me. Now, when I first started pageant coaching decades ago, that's what I did. And it came because I had a little bit of success myself. And a friend of mine said, hey, I have a friend who's wanting to achieve what you've achieved. Would you be willing to meet with her? And so I think I was charging $30 an hour or something at that time, because I was like, sure, I'll meet with her and I'll share kind of what my process was. And I started doing that with several people. And what I found was that it was working for some people, but it was not working for everybody. And I'm telling you this honestly, because this is how you got to know how this career kind of shifts over time. So I was like, here's what I did and here's what worked for me. And what I found was that it was working for the people who were very much like me. People who were naturally thin, people who had an acumen for the stage, or who had a dancing background where they were comfortable already in their body on stage. So all those things were kind of like similar to me. And so then a couple little tweaks here and there, like put this hand on the hip, look over here, and then like smile like this, and maybe say it like that a little bit. Here's how you wave, here's how a couple things you could do for fun. Like, that was the mentoring relationship that I had at that time. But what I found was that because it wasn't working for everybody, and I at that time I probably worked with maybe a couple hundred clients, but I was like, this isn't working for everybody. And I started to feel embarrassed. Like, I can't keep charging people for this. Like, I have to start being like, this doesn't work for you. Like, I can't work with you because you're different than me. And so the mentorship thing, it wasn't working. So what I needed to do, I eventually got my coaching certification. And the accountability piece is kind of the easiest piece, because when you are a goal getter yourself, when you're somebody that's like a high achiever and things like that, which typically attracts, the coaching industry typically attracts people like that, like you and I, high achievers. We're always looking for the next thing. We're the kind of people that do hold other people accountable, because that's the expectation. It's like, you're going to do what you said you were going to do. So let's go. Right. So that accountability piece is very common in pageant coaching because of the nature, the fact that just coaching in general, because coaching attracts people who are high performers, and we anticipate a lot from those that we work with. Okay. So that's the accountability partner piece. It's very common. The mentorship piece is common, especially for brand new pageant coaches. It's like, let me show you what worked for me and let's see if it works for you. Now, it wasn't working for everybody that I worked with. And so I was like, I got to figure this out. So I got a coaching certification. My coaching certification helped me to ask the right questions in the right order. This is when I hired coaches to join the Win a Pageant team for the first year of their coaching experience, that's what I was training them. How to be a coach, how to get breakthrough, how to ask these questions in this order in order to determine where your client's at and how to get her through to the other side. So I got that coaching certification, and that allowed me to actually have a little bit more success because I was like, oh, I started to see where the thing that I was teaching them that worked for me, where it was breaking down. And I started realizing, oh, it's breaking down because this person isn't as just naturally comfortable on stage as I was. And so I was like, oh, by asking these questions in this order, I discovered, oh, that's an area that I need to focus on, because if she is, gets this breakthrough, then we might be able to see progress. We might be able to see some success. And I saw that in a few different other areas. Now, naturally, in my career, I ended up, for other reasons, I ended up going to get my counseling degree. I was working on college campuses and got a counselor's degree to have a professional job on a college campus. Well, that is the thing that helped me see everything differently, because now I was learning theories about personal development, about adult learning. Like, what was it that made adults learn that was different from how kids learned? My undergraduate degree is elementary education, so I considered myself a great educator, but adults learn very differently. And I was working with adult clients as a pageant coach. And so I started realizing, whoa, hang on a second. If I understand these common theories, this could help me understand how my clients are really functioning. And so that's what I did. I started applying those theories of learning development and personal development and all of this to my clients' experience in pageantry. And it was like, boom, a game changer. Now, the final component that made me grow as a pageant coach is the consultant piece. Because still up to that point, as I was pageant coaching, I was still having clients that I just felt like they were doing all the things I was telling them to do. We were getting breakthrough. We were moving in terms of their personal development. We were certainly moving the needle, but it was like in the end, they weren't I didn't have 100%. Everybody's winning. And I was like, what's the deal? Like, how do I get that? And honestly, this is at the time that I didn't even know how to get it for me. I was also hitting a wall and hiring all these people who were just mentors and who were accountability partners. And it was like, and they were asking me questions, but in a weird order that I couldn't get my breakthrough from the coach. Now, pageant coaching has changed a lot in the last 10 years, but during my competition years, it was really hard for me to find somebody that had the strategy that worked. And so finally, after being first runner up multiple times myself, I was like, what I need is a strategy. Now, interesting story. At that time, I was working on college campuses, and one of the things that was very, very coveted was a position working with Deloitte. Now, what Deloitte does is they raise up consultants, they train them in the industry about what works for various types of businesses, and then they send their consultants into an organization, usually in major metropolitan areas, big companies, big major, like Fortune 500 companies. And these consultants then will revolutionize the business from the inside out and make it start to work again. And so I was like, what if I thought like that? What if I was able to go to a pageant woman and consult her in a way that applied something that worked? And so this is what made me really kind of study pageantry and think, what is the thing that works? This is how I developed the Legacy Project, was because I was like, what's the thing, the one thing, such that by doing it, everything else will fall into place? And this was what I discovered is what I now call the Legacy Project. And what I love about this and adding this into my coaching, it changed everything, because now women could win no matter whether or not they love to be on stage, or no matter their body shape and size. What it came down to, pageants are won in the interview room. And it's not for the reasons that we typically think, like great eye contact or being a really great communicator. It comes down to the sound bites that you craft in advance in order to be able to share in a very short amount of time. Y'all know you could win anybody over in 30 minutes, right? If you had 30 minutes time to sit down with them, it would be like pageants would be a completely different ballgame because you would be able to win them over. But how do you do it in like 5 minutes or 3 minutes, 7 minutes? How do we do it in that length of time? We create the legacy project, which knocks down all the dominoes: personal brand, all of the media appearances that you want and need, all of the focus and plan for the future of your year of service. And so when I discovered that, I was like, I think that this is it. So I implemented it for myself and it worked. It made pageant weekend so easy. And that's the thing I started to teach my clients. And it was working and it was working and it was working. And then that's how we developed the academy. And so now inside of the Win a Pageant Academy, you get the consulting, which comes through. It's a proven strategy. This is the strategy. It works. And so we teach it to you through on-demand videos. It's like, here's the core, we call it our core curriculum. Everybody goes through that curriculum to build out a legacy project. And so you start with your branding, then you build your legacy project, then you use the branding, the legacy project, but now you got to talk about it. That's your interview and your communication, paperwork. All of these pieces come back to, and that's the strategy. And you get that inside of the academy. Now, you also get in the academy the coaching and the accountability, and of course, the mentorship of all of us who have gone before you in various different pageant systems and in different decades and in different seasons of life. And you get this counselor relationship because each week when we show up with you live in our group trainings, I'm able to show you, hey, here's what tends to go on for most pageant women just consider if maybe this is what you're going through now. And what we find is that a lot of women will be like, wow, that is what I'm experiencing. Like, Alycia, how do you know me so well? And I'm like, this is what I've been working with thousands of women for the last decades. This is what I see happening over and over. So if we know that, we've got the wisdom about it and we apply it to your situation, you'll be able to get through it that much faster. So that's what pageant coaching really is all about. Again, everybody has a little bit of a different style. So you need to know, what do you need the most? Maybe you already have a strategy. Maybe you know exactly what your plan is. You just need somebody to hold you accountable to all of these pieces. Well, the great news is that's probably significantly less expensive than a consultant. Typically, consultants are far more expensive because they've developed a strategy that actually works no matter whom it is applied to. Mentorship is often something that can also be a slightly more expensive, not necessarily because of the fact that it applies to everybody, but because you are getting that individual person's experience. And if you feel like you are very similar to that person, then you might not need a strategy that works for everybody. You might just need the strategy that worked for her. So mentorship is also, it can slide in either direction. Some people overcharge for mentorship because they're like, well, I've done it before, I've got the experience. Some people undercharge for it because they're like, it might not work for you, Coaching is something that you could probably hire a coach in almost any industry. And if they're a really great coach, they will be able to coach you through breakthroughs. And that's the personal development side of things that all of us in pageantry truly love. But that's something that most certified coaches, a coaching certification is not wildly expensive. A few $1,000s can get you a coaching certification versus a counseling certification that requires a master's level degree or some additional education. It's very expensive to get, but the opportunity of impact that you're able to receive from a counselor is beautiful. It applies to life. This is why in our coaching and in many other pageant coaches, we say, this is not just coaching for stage. This is coaching for life. We say pageant coaching for on stage and in life. And it's because our coaching experience, the counseling experience, all of those also apply to your life. And then, of course, the accountability, the mentorship, and the strategy as a consultant are specific things that you get when you join the academy from our brand. So hopefully this helps you to understand a bit more about what pageant coaches do, why there is such a wide variety in payment structure. Why is it that this coach is so inexpensive and that this coach is so expensive? And which ones do I really need? Do I need to pay for the strategy or maybe not? Maybe it's really, I'm just looking for the accountability, okay? So hopefully this helped you. Again, I want to know in the comments, what is important to you? What do you really look for when you're hiring a pageant coach? What do you love to see? Thanks so much for joining us today, and I'll see you next time.